It's go time! Hey guys, Bulletproof Turtle Man here, getting back on the art, and here's another video about color. This one here in particular is how I go about coloring some lined art. First and most obvious step is to have obtained a digital format of the picture you're trying to work with. Open in a photo editing software such as Photoshop, Corel, Manga Studio, Sai, or GIMP, or any other particular programs you may have. The first actual thing I do is right-click the line art layer I'm working with and make a duplicate of it. From there, I can actually make adjustments to the line art layer and always have the original to refer back to. The next step is cleaning. From here, you actually have to take the line art and adjust it so that you can use it for your work. Just real quick before I start talking about cleaning, I just want to point out here that I just made a group and then another blank layer. I'm just sorting these out. It's always good practice to do that, especially when you start getting up to higher numbers and layers, and it's just really hard keeping track of everything. So here, during this cleaning process, I'm just going to remove the color. You can actually hit Ctrl U and bring up the Adjust Hue Saturation tab and turn down the saturation of the whole picture to 0, or you can hit Ctrl Shift U and it's a much faster shortcut, like here. Once you remove the color, you may actually notice that the line art is not as dark in certain areas like you want it to be. This can be remedied when you bring up the levels window. What the levels actually does is it tweaks the darks, the lights, and the midtones in the image to either add more dark, or more gray, or more lights. Now, adjusting levels is something you can actually do after this next step, but I like to do it before and after just to kind of see what I'm working with. For this next step, you will actually be going down to the bottom where there's a tab called Channels. You actually open it up and load a selection by hitting one of the buttons down at the bottom. Now, I can't quite articulate what this does, but I know it does select everything aside from black and allows you to delete it, which will be done right here. Now you may actually notice that you can see the original line art. That's because we've just selected all of the white and the grays and deleted them from the line art layer that we're working on. Now everything is transparent and you can actually just work directly with the line art layer just like this. I know typically some artists actually just set the line art layer to multiply, but what I don't like about that is if you actually have anything you missed in the line art that isn't quite clean, like little grains, it will actually show through onto your drawing when you actually set it like that and start coloring underneath. Also, between the original line art layer and the layer that's transparent that we'll be coloring on soon, I've just made a blank white layer. Here I'm also readjusting the levels because if there were any grays present when I deleted them after loading the selection, it would actually make the image a lot lighter. By readjusting the levels again, I get to make it darker to the level I want it to be. Also, during this time, while you're adjusting your levels, you can actually take a look at the image and see if you actually missed any small grains anywhere. You can actually take the opportunity to clean it up a bit more. I'm not doing as much here, but that's just because of my own personal preference. While I was drawing this, I actually did use a green pencil and I was actually shading the areas I wanted to have a little bit more grit to it, so that's just my stylistic preference here. I will, however, take this moment to actually say that I really do admire clean line work and very clean art styles, even if that's not really the style I'm going for myself here. One of my favorites in particular is actually an artist that does almost like a graffiti cartoon style, but he does it of stylized Pokemon. His name is Shido, or that's at least how I pronounce it, S-I-D-O. And I think he's a fucking man. You should check out some of his works, actually. After all the loading and deleting I've done for the image, I've actually kind of lost a bit of the edges and it's kind of fuzzy now. So I'm going to use a bit of this sharpen tool under the filters. It's called Smart Sharpen. What you can actually do is kind of sharpen up the edges of your image, just to kind of make your line art a little bit more prominent here. In other words, it makes it really crispy, like bacon actually. I'm not entirely sure whether or not the difference is noticeable here, but you'll get to see it when you actually play with it yourself. In regards to what I just said, please don't take that out of context just because it sounds really strange. And now I'm just going to fast forward this because it's just a really slow process of me doing some additional cleanup. Yeah, so just gonna clean up the line art a little bit more, make some adjustments, delete some specks and clean up the grains, just make some solid areas black, just like that. And that just about wraps up the line art portion. For this next portion, I'm just going to take the PSD file that I saved in Photoshop and bring it over into Manga Studio and do the coloring. The circle I made earlier while working in Photoshop, I've just pretty much locked it on its own layer as the base color layer. I just really am going to color everything on one layer here. Now, you could actually make a separate layer for every different color, like blues, reds, skin tones, anything of that sort. But just for speed here, I just kept everything on one layer. And the fact is, you can just lock transparent pixels and just continue working on it. With the pen tool here that I can use in Manga Studio, I can just get really clean and quick, I guess you would say precision marks for coloring while you're working, so that's why I really prefer Manga Studio over Photoshop with the brush tool. It makes everything go a lot faster for me here. Now, while Photoshop also does have tablet recognition and sensitivity pickup, it just doesn't feel quite as natural as some parts of Manga Studio. Manga Studio does have a brush, a pencil tool, much like Photoshop, but it also has a pen tool that flows much more smoothly. Like, it'll actually make broader strokes when you press down a little bit harder or thinner ones, just like a real pen, and it feels very, very smooth and actually great for making line art here. And I'm just gonna continue coloring, just keep coloring, just keep coloring. Yeah, let's have a bit of that. That looks nice. Yeah, some shadows, lights. Yeah, now make it look fancy. Yeah, because no one's totally listening anymore. Yeah. I mean, yeah, just gonna continue coloring this some more. Typically, my workflow process involves me scanning a picture, adjusting the line arts in Photoshop, doing the roughs for the colors, and then just taking it to Manga Studio and doing the main brunt of the coloring there, just for the smooth blending and the color options. If I want to kind of do a little bit more smooth or slightly rougher style by blending less, it just kind of works out for me altogether. But afterwards, I usually take it back into Photoshop and do any adjustments here and there, just because I'm more well versed with the commands, and it's actually a lot better for photo editing and has a greater capacity for adjustment tools and tweaking things here and there if you want. And this wraps up my rundown on coloring line art, at least through my work process of it. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns about this, or suggestions, leave a comment below. Thanks again for watching. This is Bulletproof Turtle Man, out.